Revenge films.
It's been a few years since I got divorced. Looking back, it was kind of immature of me, but at the time I couldn't think of any other way to get my revenge. When I was 36 years old, I got married to Ken, who was 3 years younger than me. I wasn't that young anymore, and part of me kind of rushed the marriage, I would say. It was after I'd been cheated on by my boyfriend that I'd been dating for many years. I had several failed attempts after being dumped and attended a matchmaking party as a last resort. To my surprise, Ken approached me there, and we hit it off. I had pretty much decided that my next relationship would be my last, so it didn't take long for me to be ready to get married. Ken was a fine young man, and he was very handsome. He was a football player until his late 20s, and he had big muscles and was so attractive to me. Ken was the oldest sibling in his family, so his parents had been telling him to get married too, so things went quite smoothly, and we were getting married in no time. We held a nice wedding ceremony in a big hotel venue. Ken was always so nice. Even when I got pregnant, he would always think of me and help out around the house without having to ask. And he took the day off on my delivery day to be by my side and rub my back. When our baby was born, he was crying tears of joy.
Thank you for having him.
He thanked me for delivering our baby. I thought that I had finally had the kind of happy life that I could brag to everyone about, but my happiness was short-lasted. One evening when our boy was 14 months old, I could tell that something was wrong. He was coughing painfully. I thought that it might be a cold at first, and when I took his temperature, he didn't have a fever, so I decided to keep an eye on him for a while. But quickly, he started wheezing when he breathed, and his lips turned blue and passed out. Typical symptoms of cyanosis. I immediately called an ambulance, and when I went to the hospital, the pediatrician diagnosed him as a heavy case of asthma. That night, when Ken found out about the asthma, he changed completely.
I can't believe you gave birth to such a weak child. I knew I should have never had a child with an old hag like you. What a big mistake to marry a grandma with a rotting womb.
Ken started coming home late after that. He started getting all into nightclubs that hired immigrant women for cheap labor, strip clubs, brothels, and anything else of the sort. He started sleeping with random girls and hookers instead of me, because apparently, he wasn't sexually attracted to old hags. On the other hand, I was left all alone to deal with my son's problems, and my mind was constantly on overdrive. Ken didn't change though. He would come home late at night, drunk, and try to get me in bed. I thought you weren't sexually attracted to old hags. I would be exhausted and say no, but...
How dare you say no, bitch? You would have never gotten married if it weren't for me, you expired piece of shit. Where's my gratitude?
He would say things like that and force my clothes off. I was almost scared for my life, so I put my mind in a happy place and just let him use my body. The entire thing was so loveless, and it would be over when he was done. By the time our boy was due, Ken barely ever came home before midnight, and there were many days that he didn't return till morning. He basically just came home to take a shower and get dressed for work. I had already felt his proclivity towards violence, and I could tell that it was escalating by the day. One night, he came home past midnight as usual, and suddenly woke me up. When I turned on the lights, he was standing there furious.
Why weren't my slippers lined up?
That was the reason, I guess, and he brought the slippers all the way into the bedroom just so he could throw them at me. Ow!
Shut up! You think that hurts? I'll show you pain!
He beat me until I had bruises on my face after that. One morning, I made him a cup of coffee, but he must have been in a hurry because when he took a big sip, he burned his tongue a little.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
He was pissed. No, I'm sorry though.
You liar! Let me show you how hot that was.
He yelled at me and threw the coffee at me and burned me. Through all of his abuse, I had to think about my son first because he had asthma, and I couldn't get a job because I had to look after him. So I was dependent on the limited money that Ken was handing me to survive. So I took all the abuse. One such day, Ken handed me money for living expenses, but he only gave me $100. Why only this much?
What do you mean, only? Huh? All you do is sit at home and do nothing, so this is all you need.
Breastfeed our boy or something.
He laughed maliciously as he left for work. had reached my breaking point. I signed the divorce papers and left them on the table, gathered my things, and contacted my parents. I've decided to get a divorce. My parents yelled at me and demanded an explanation. I'll explain in detail when I get home. I hung up and went over to my husband's room. It was always off limits to me, but I went in and did some digging. It was a completely different world in there. There were piles of designer brand items and R-rated adult items. Thinking back, I should have just taken it all to a pawn shop and taken the money as alimony, but I wasn't thinking clearly back then, and all I could do was take out my anger and resentment on his beloved things. I decided to get him back indirectly, where he wouldn't know at first, but would feel the revenge over time. I took his expensive sweaters out of his drawers and stretched out the necks and sleeves. Then, I cut off the embroideries and cut the stitching on the back and glued it back on with water-soluble glue to barely maintain the logos, so they would all fall apart when I tried to wash them. I also cut the stitching of the handles of expensive bags in a couple of places. Just enough so that when he tried carrying something a little bit heavy in them, they would rip off. I kept doing other things like drawing lines with Sharpies on his favorite striped shirt and making small cuts in his armpits so he could see a hole when he raised your arms. I took his scarves and cut off some of the frills and cut holes in them and restitched his coat buttons with a single string so they would tear off easily. I snapped every other rib on the frame of his umbrella too. Everything I broke were expensive designer brand items. After that, I took all his porn DVDs and switched the insides to Disney movies and replaced the inside of his lotion with dish soap and put it back. Once I was finished getting my revenge, I took my son and went over to my parents' house to explain everything that I had gone through and showed them my doctor's note as proof. Everything was there on was noble procedure. I received all my alimony and child support fees in one payment from Ken. As my son grew older, his asthma stabilized, and by the time he was in elementary, he was well enough for me to get a part-time job for a few hours during the day. My older brother and his family were living with my parents at the time, so I couldn't stay there forever even though they said I could. So I decided to find a place to live with my son. My marriage with Ken was a big mistake, but I'm still grateful that I was able to have my beloved son. By the way, after we got divorced, I got a restraining order on Ken, so I'm not sure how much of the revenge he noticed. I should have been smarter about it and gone further, but I didn't want him to notice right away, and it was the best I could think of at the moment. It was the best that a gentlewoman like me could do at the time.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.